weight gain despite having a good lifestyle were the triggers that, kind of pushed me to go get tested for PCOS, and also like delayed periods, but not very delayed. So because of these physically visible symptoms is why I kind of went to a doctor to figure out what's wrong.
Right. And what was the first piece of advice that was offered by your doctor?
So I have been very, very fortunate that I got a good doctor right in the first, go. Basically, I did a lot of research even before going to my doctor, because that's also very important. Getting a good medical expert in your PCOS journey is super, super important. So fortunately, I asked a lot of people. I asked my friends, I asked my family members who've been seeing gynecologists around where I'm living. So I got a good doctor, and, she explained things to me, and she did not, put me on the pill, first of all, thankfully. She did not, right away ask me to, lose the weight, because I was anyway kind of confused as to why I'm gaining the weight despite having an active lifestyle. So my doctor kind of explained to me everything, what's happening, why is it happening, what I can do about it. So I was primarily told to, modify my lifestyle rather than, be dependent on pills, because she, explained to me right then that it's a long-term thing. It's not like a 6-month thing that you'll eat pills for 6 months and you will get over with it. So because it is a long-term thing, she explained to me that lifestyle changes are the key. So I've been very fortunate with the doctor.
Yeah, amongst the fortunate few. That's really good to hear, honestly.
Yeah.
So like you mentioned, you already had an active lifestyle, so it's not because of your PCOS that you chose the route of lifestyle modification or being a little serious about your food and activity, or was it because of PCOS? You were always this healthy, active person.
No, actually, I wasn't really a big junk food person, to be honest. I'd prefer home food over junk food any day. But then obviously, after getting diagnosed, I got a lot of answers for a lot of symptoms that I was seeing. So then I knew that before, if I was eating like junk food, like maybe a few times a week, at least then I knew that, I need to be consistent with like a particular kind of a lifestyle. So consistency is what started after getting diagnosed. So like now I know that I need to be consistent with this, with like every single meal that I'm eating. I need to be, very, like I need to be like on spot, not with every meal, but with most meals that I can manage. And, other things also, like your stress, sleep, everything else also. So consistency is what came after the diagnosis.
After the diagnosis, understood. So as compared to you, I mean, I'll just briefly move to Ananya here. So Ananya, you were diagnosed with PCOS 4 years back, right? So what was your journey like what were your symptoms, or what led you to this diagnosis? And if you can tell us a little about your journey.
Yeah, sure. So like I got diagnosed in the year 2017, and that was just 4 months after I got married. And actually, I did not really have any symptoms except the one time, after 4 months of my marriage, I had a gap of around 45 to 50 days where I did not get my periods. And of course, once you're married and you're newly married, everybody expects that you're pregnant, but that was not the case. That was not the case. So when I went to the doctor, and she, went through all the blood tests, everything was fine actually. Only when she took my transvaginal ultrasound, there were cysts on both my ovaries. So that is when, she said that you have PCOS. And from there till now, I mean, I am not that fortunate like Mansi to have a good doctor right in front. I mean, my first doctor was worse. I'm keeping that answer for later. As in, there were some statements that were made, and that was, really not needed. And it was really rude and harsh for someone new someone who's newly been diagnosed with this disorder. So, but yeah, it's been 4 years, and I basically had the symptom of irregular periods. And after that, it started, because of course I was put on pill for a course of 3 months, and of course the 3 months course messed up my entire routine for 1 year. So that was the thing. And then other than that, I did have cystic acne around my chin for a very less amount of time, because I really realized very fast that I had to quit dairy, and it went off like that. So these were the two things which were major. Of course, one symptom that we never mention is anxiety and stress, because it's not physical and it's not seen. So people usually forget to mention it. that has been a crazy symptom. I mean, I've been tried to bring it down a lot, but then there are still days, you know. Few days back, I had taken a break from Instagram for 2 weeks because I was, you know, there was so much happening, and I mean, sometimes it's just really overwhelming. So, you know, that is one thing that, you know, takes time. It's not that easy to get out of stress and anxiety, but it's there. It will go. But other than that, it's been 2 years when I've had a regular period. I've not missed one single period, and I have a very proper 30-day cycle, and I don't have cystic acne. And of course, other than these were the two symptoms which I really had, which were crazy, which are in control right now. Yes, but of course, there's stress and anxiety, and of course, the you know, the cystic acne comes and goes whenever it has its own mood. So, you know, when it comes, you have to realize that okay, something is going on. You have to bring something in proper. So that was, you know, my story, and that's how we started. Yeah.
Right. And, you know, I think what you just mentioned about the anxiety and stress part of it, it's a hidden symptom that very few people address or even know about. But I think acceptance is super important, because until unless you accept it, you will not be able to deal with it. And it's not just in the case of PCOS, right? Anxiety and stress, or any mental health disorder for that matter, it's so important to accept it first so you could sort of heal it. So why I moved to you in between my conversation with Mansi was that, you know, as compared to Mansi, we know, like, you've always been a foodie, right? You've always loved food. So how was that transition when, you know, you were told that you will have to control your food habits, you will have to change your dietary habits?
Yeah. So, you know, when I got diagnosed, and the very, you know, after that, the first suggestion that's given very practically is lose your weight, lose 10% of your weight and all those things. And, you know, you have to go low carb. And I mean, I was also under a dietitian who suggested me keto and lots of other things. I mean, I've tried and tested almost everything that's there in the market, all the crazy fat diets. So everything was there. So, you know, because the very initial step for me was, you know, I mean, what I realize now, 4 years after being experiencing all of this, is I needed to take short steps instead of, you know, jumping. But the thing was, because the suggestion was coming to me through a medical professional, I couldn't deny it. You know, all of a sudden, till today afternoon, I'm eating like bahut khushi se I'm having my rice and dal, and she's like, dude, you got to stop it from tomorrow. You know, it's a, I mean, it affects you not just physically, it affects you mentally also. So you know, the start for me was really very bad in terms of food also, because all of a sudden I had to, you know, it just changed. So it was very difficult accepting at that part. I'm talking about 2017. It was really hard because I was eating whatever I was told to eat, but then there was this constant reminding in my head that, you know, I'm craving something else, I'm craving something else. And craving didn't mean I was craving pizza or burger. I was craving basic white rice, and I was craving, you know, basic things, not that something very thing, because they told me that basic is not allowed in PCOS. You know, your basic dal and roti and chawal, which I've grown all my life eating, okay, that's not allowed. So it was very big as in transition. But of course, later when I, you know, I ditched all of my dietitians, and when I started with my own trial and error method on my own body, because at the end of the day, you know your body best. So when I realized, and I realized, I mean, for the past 2 years, that, you know, I can eat actually everything, but I need to know where to stop and what is the moderation. You know, having a slice of a pizza on a Saturday after the entire week of clean eating will not give me harm. Because, but that was, you know, but that wasn't the case when I first started. There was so much fear, and of course they had to give me the fear, because of course they were, you know, that was the job, to give me the fear so that I could continue with them. So it was very easy.
Right.
But yes, so the transition initially was very difficult. I would always think of, you know, night there wouldn't be good sleep, because it was like, oh, tomorrow also I'm not going to get, when is this 3 months going to get over? That constant, you know, reminding of my body and my soul of good food. But later when I realized, like, because I can have everything, and he can, like, you know, Mansi posted one pizza video a few days back, which was a very healthy pizza. So basically you can have all your junk food, you know, by giving it a healthy taste. that's how after that transition came place, it was easy. Truly today I don't crave anything because I can have everything because I know how to have it. Yeah.
Right. So important to understand your food and build a good relationship with your food instead of just fearing your food. Yeah. Great, great. So I'll briefly move on to Astha now. Like how we've been talking about lifestyle and how important it is to keep anxiety and stress at bay, make sure you're eating well, you're eating right, understanding all those things. So Astha, you being, I mean, I'm sure a lot of women today would relate to you being somebody being a working woman in a full-fledged corporate career and choosing to stop it right there and then. So firstly, what was the reason there? Were there health triggers? Was it something else? What was your first thought when you decided to move to something completely different from your career?
For me, I think it's more about the mind, like the stress and anxiety part of it. I've always resonated more with it, and I've always found a path through that, even for my health issues, which is why I got into holistic healing and I got into thought-based healing and all of those things. So, well, I was also diagnosed with PCOS about 10 years back when I was 24, 25. I'm 34 now. But it was a very minor, very mild version of it. Only my left ovaries had a few cysts, so it wasn't like a full blown thing. And I was a foodie as well. I am a foodie. I'm still a foodie, and it was very difficult for me to control my food. I was like, okay, this is not happening. So then I looked for alternative ways and means, and I started meditating a lot. I started doing a lot of breath work. I got into subconscious mind healing, and and of course I exercised because that I used to love. I always used to love dancing alongside my college, alongside my work. I was always dancing. So I continued my classes, I continued my yoga, my Pilates, my dance classes, and I meditated every day for 20 to 30 minutes.
Wow.
I got an ultrasound done after a year, I think, because I am fairly careless with my health, if I may admit myself. And there were no cysts, so it was kind of gone. And since then, the facial hair reduced and the acne on the face went away, because same here, my symptoms weren't anything drastic. It was just there were cysts, there was excessive hair, and my cycle used to be maybe 5 to 7 days delayed, not even like more than that. Now I have a bang on cycle and all of that. So I don't know if it was just health issues that prompted me to shift, but I realized that I love something more than I love what I'm doing at the moment. And I've always been a firm believer that if you're doing what you love, your body, your health, your lifestyle, the people around, everything starts to make sense and fall into place. And I think that was my major reason for shifting into being a full-time entrepreneur, dancer, choreographer, and a healer, something that I always believed in, I was very passionate about. But then there was a part of me which was very scared about making it a profession. But so then I decided to take the leap, and so now things started unfolding, and a lot of things started settling. A lot of things came up as well, like in my mind, in the emotions and all of that. But I went through all of it, and I think the health did improve sufficiently.
Right. And congratulations on creating such a beautiful space. Like, I've been to Dhuri myself so many times. So people who are based out of Bangalore, you should definitely check out Dhuri for a lot of, dance and fitness classes. Okay, so like you said, right, when you are happy, you are healthy, the people around you would also sort of resonate with the same feeling. So on that note, I would like to move to Captain Ritu, because her Insta handle happens to be Fit Mom Fitter Homes, and I don't think anything describes it better than that. So Captain Ritu, you've done a bunch of things. You've been in the army. You're a law postgraduate. Right now, you are into the whole health sphere, which I would come to. We would love to for you to explain the entire spectrum that you are into right now. So starting with your first role, starting with your role of being an army officer, how was it like? I mean, what I'm sure there must have been roadblocks. It's not easy for a woman in India to, get into the army in the first place, leave alone being an officer. So what were the fights that you had to fight to reach there?
First of all, good evening, everyone. I think a woman's body is like a secret garden, and we all have our own, ways of health issues which we all have faced. I am personally not a PCOS fighter, but listening to all of you women, like I had my own health journeys. Like it's really good to connect with all of you and be here to speak about my journey as well. So I belong to a very conservative family in Haryana, typically a village in Haryana. And for me, joining army was like, of course, it was a proud moment for my family. They all celebrated it. But reaching to that destination was very, very difficult. Of course, when I was going to do my law, then only maybe my parents and my grandparents heard a lot about, why are you sending the girl outside? They're not supposed to go outside. Ye aapka naam badnaam kar degi, all that, whatever happens in conservative families. But thankfully, my grandfather's support was something which made me keep going. My brother basically wanted to join the army, and he gave SSB 2-3 times, but he couldn't clear. So one day he was just showing me a video of the IMA training, like how in Indian military academy the people train there. I was so intrigued and so excited knowing this. My God, what a tough training! This will make me even tougher. So I was a law postgraduate. So one day a notification came to get enrolled into the Indian Army as a judge advocate general's officer, like to do the court martials. So it was a good opportunity. And my father told me to just go ahead. I was preparing for the state judicial services, but I applied. And they have a single logo in Indian Army. You have it in you. They always say you have it in you, and they're looking for that officer-like qualities. Literally, I didn't prepare much for it. I just went and just gave myself what I am. I just showed them what I am. And luckily, I got selected from, which is known as the rejection center, from where Amitabh Bachchan was also rejected. So I got selected from Allahabad SSB, and I was in the merit list. And luckily, I was a part of Short Service Commissioned Officers Batch 05. I did 11 months there, which was not a cakewalk. It was like going to hell and being back. And all my dreams of watching that in the movies, you will go for a training, you'll become tough. It was like, I would say it made me not only physically tough, but I'm like a rock in my mind now. So you cannot break that rock. It's like that. So I would say that there should be a mandatory service.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
So this was it.
Captain Ritu, you're breaking up a little.
Is it fine now?
Sorry, we lost you for a second. Yeah, it's fine now. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah. So I was saying I feel that Indian Army service should be made mandatory for all the citizens in our country, not only for getting physically strong, but becoming mentally, strong.
I think that would be great. We could all use some of that strength, I'm sure. So how did the whole idea of becoming a health coach come into place? And if you could just tell us a little about the roles that you're playing right now. Like I did read up a little about you being a health coach with My Health Buddy, but there were other things also that you are into, right? So if you could slightly throw some light on that, and where did the inspiration come from?
So I'll start with a little background. So being an army officer, we visualize women to be fit, tough, right? But as one part is being that ambitious woman who's fierce and who wants to conquer the world. Then comes one part of the women wherein that part of being a mother comes, that feeling of being a nurturer and a creator and somebody who cares for their family, right? I have both these parts in me, and I believe that each woman has these two parts. So I went as a fierce personality in the Indian Army. I will conquer the world. I am a captain. I will do this, that, and all that. But once I got married and I became a mother, trust me, I took the decision of becoming a mother and nobody else did. Becoming a mother is like a supreme power given by the God. And if you choose to become a mother, I think your first responsibility is to take care of that child whom you have taken into the world. You can't just, on the name of your career or ambitious, nothing against anybody who's, continuing their job in anything in spite of having kids. But my husband was a state officer and I was a central officer. So keeping my child away from my husband. Secondly, Indian Army demands that it's not a job of 9 to 5. It's a 24-hour job.
Right.
So there were days when I was called at 1 in the night. I was called at 2 in the night. There were certain protocols which needs to be followed, which was hindering in my duty as a mother. So
Right.
after a lot of struggle, I thought that my country may get another good officer, but my child will not get another mother.
True.
Yeah, so I took a decision to take release after 5 years of commissioning in the army. Also, due to a lot
Right.
of pressure and motherhood, I had postpartum depression as well. Uh, I started. I had an eating disorder. I developed an eating disorder, and I started eating a lot.
Okay.
Like there was a time when I used to finish 1 kg of sweets ka dabba in a single go. I think it looks exaggerated, but that's
Wow.
reality.
Yeah.
My family. So if somebody got a sweets ka this thing, it's very hard to listen that she's an army officer. Come on, she's so fit. How can she be so fat?
Right.
Time I
Right.
reached,
But you never know what's happened before.
yeah. So I was
Yeah.
80 kgs. I knew from inside that I have to work out. I knew from inside I have to control myself, but I couldn't because I was actually suffering from depression. And my family
Right.
thought that, she's being an irresponsible mother. She's being like that. They didn't understand. Then there was this bout of crying and me taking professional help and coming out of this depression. And
Right.
I lost weight after that. And I realized that it's not something, it's easier said than done. There are, like I said, the body is a secret garden. So there are many things happening inside which has no answers. Okay. And it's out of your control.
Right. Right.
Anxiety, depression, and these things, especially after becoming a mother. So after my journey of losing 24 kgs, then I have my second pregnancy. And luckily, I was already certified pre-pace. By that time, I got my certification into pre-postnatal rehab exercises and nutrition. So I knew how to control my weight this time. I knew how to not get into those triggers which leads me to depression again because my family support was there with me now. But I think something else was waiting for me, which is called diastasis recti. So it is a very common condition which 99% of the women suffer post pregnancy, not after first pregnancy, but after multiple deliveries. Like if they have 2 children, if they have twins, or they keep on delivering child. So our abdominal muscles are intact like this. Okay. So with the growing tummy, they separate, right? If you have the right guidance of pre-postnatal rehabilitation, like you keep on doing those breathing exercises, if you have the right guidance, which is missing, totally missing in India, most of the gym trainers tells you to start doing crunches and sit-ups to lose that belly fat, which is inherently wrong. So my muscles separated. So my organs were no more separated by my muscles. They were just being separated by a thin layer of a connective tissue. So if you check my page, Fit Moms, Fitter Homes, I have posted my transformation. Now I also post transformations of my clients. So my belly button popped out. My belly button popped out. And I was on the verge of getting an umbilical hernia because my connective tissue was about to break. And then I found out that none of the doctors know about it. None of the fitness trainers know about it. Physiotherapists, they claim to, treat it, but even they had half knowledge. They had no idea. So I did my research. I started reading more about it, and I came to know about Tupler technique. So there's this registered nurse in New York called Julie Tupler, who invented this technique in the year 1986. And imagine what is it today? It's here 2021. It was there in Indians don't know about it. Okay.
Wow.
So I wrote her an email, and she told me yes, she trains people to train other people. I asked for her help.
Okay.
And then she told me that there is no Asian certified in it. You do not even have any person in Asia to, treat. It's like a surgical matter. You will go to
train you or treat you. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you have to go for a surgery. That's the first thing the doctors told you. It's separated. Go for a surgery, get it repaired.
Right.
So I went I started following the technique. It took me around 6 months to start seeing the difference. Within a 1 month, my muscles were again together. I did not require
Okay.
surgery anymore just by doing exercises. And then I decided to
Right.
become the first trainer in India. I did the course with Julie
Okay.
Tabla, and I became
Mhm.
first licensee to bring this technique to India. Still, people are
Got
not aware, and I'm trying to create more awareness about this, because the reasons
it.
for
Hmm.
having back pain, for having that mummy tummy, is just because of the separation of abdominal muscles.
Wow.
So my journey of being a mother made me become a health coach. So that's like a small answer for your question.
Wow, wow. I think it's amazing how all of your personal experiences or some, I mean, either your passions or something you went through led to something so, something of value that you can now offer to other people. So I think that really sounds great. In the next segment, I would like to move back to Mansi again with some questions. Um, so Mansi, you started PCO Decoded, which is like a resource for PCOS nutrition and other things related to it, right? So, like you already mentioned, your motivation behind it was your own journey of PCOS. So, what I would like to understand, were there any taboos or any insensitive remarks that were thrown at you when you started on your journey with of PCOS, or when you started the page itself? Because we all know, right, women with PCOS, they have to hear so many statements which are mostly myths, which people obviously are not aware of. So were there any such insensitive remarks that really was stuck with you, or that sort of got you down?
See, again, I've been very fortunate that I've had a lot of support from my friends and my, family, the people I was living with, be it family at home or, friends or roommates or flatmates on campus. So that way, I didn't really have many issues. But, what I realized is that after I started the page, I got quite a few DMs of girls, as young as 21 years old, telling me that, we're not even done with our undergraduation. There is a random doctor in some random village, some male doctor who's, kind of brainwashed her parents into making into forcing that 21-year-old girl who wants to study to get married, because apparently sex solves PCOS problems. So
Wow.
I've had a lot of people tell me these things. I personally have been very fortunate that I didn't really have to had to listen to any of this. But I've had a lot of people tell me things like that. I've had heard stories of in-laws kind of pressurizing women and mentally and physically torturing women into uh, during their issues with infertility and things like that. So
Mhm.
I've had like small incidents, like people pointing out, why do you have facial hair or things like that. But because like you said, acceptance is everything, doesn't really, I don't really care about it anymore. I know I have to live with this, and if I don't accept it, I will not be able to live. So I
Right.
personally haven't had to deal with a lot of taboos, but I know a lot of women throughout the country do, and it's very, very unfortunate. I try to help them as much as I can, but I obviously cannot help everybody, so I'm just doing the best that I can for now.
Right, right. I think all of us, I mean, I can personally definitely resonate with that. You do want to help a lot of people, but you can't really help. You can just do whatever is in your capacity.
And
It's
another thing that really happens is sorry, yeah,
no, go ahead, go
a
ahead.
lot of people basically a lot of girls tell me, like younger girls, they tell me that their parents ask them to not speak about it, or not talk about it, just because one of the symptoms of one of the million symptoms of PCOS is irregular periods, and you can't really talk about periods in your house, or in a house with a brother or something like that. So that's also a very big issue that I see a lot of girls facing in India, just because
Right,
one of the symptoms is irregular periods. So that is also
right.
some that which is why there is a need to talk about this more openly.
Right, right. I'm so glad you and Ananya, you've been talking about it so openly, and it's great. And one thing I just realized, both of you have such different journeys, in the sense that, Ananya briefly mentioned that she has, she's had a lot of these insensitive remarks thrown at her, right? Whereas you were fortunate enough to not have too much of it. So, Ananya, what was it like for you? What did you have to hear or deal with?
The thing is, actually, even I didn't have any of those unfortunate, comments coming towards me from my relatives or at home or my in-laws to be precise, because they are, even before I had PCOS, I was well educated about PCOS from my mother and my dad. So, these things didn't really. But my worst comment, I mean, of course, I call myself pig skin because nothing really goes past me. You can tell me anything, I'm like, whatever, So, but one comment which really irritated me to my core was, again, I tell you, I had a very bad experience with doctors. The very first doctor who had diagnosed me with PCOS, just after she had looked at my blood reports and my scan and everything, and she was like, the very first statement, even before saying like it'll be okay or anything of that sort, you're gonna have to go through these medical things. She was like, and I was just married for 4 months then. She was like, you should start planning for having a baby. And I was so pissed off. I mean, I'm sorry for using that word because, first of all, for me, I'll just tell you what I think is having a baby or not having a baby. First, nobody else can decide that. It's very commonly just it's made very generalized that women want to have baby. No, some women don't want to have baby, and it's none of your problem. So a doctor directly telling to me at my face is like, you should, dude, I've come to you for my PCOS and not for having a baby. You should think about dealing with my PCOS and not advising me with having, oh, you should start having it because later in your life, as you get old, you're going to have difficulties in infertility. I mean, I don't, deny any of that facts that infertility is a part of PCOS too. Many women do go through it. But then, putting a statement on the face of your patient telling you should start thinking of having a baby, for me, it was, very bad. First of all, to have or not to have is my choice. Even to have, when to have is my choice. When I come to you saying that, oh, I've come to you for my infertility problems, then you can tell me when to have and what to go through. So that was one statement which I really didn't like. And the second statement was, that was all from her. And there is this very common statement which I have heard for a long period of my time. Even before I got my periods, even before I had PCOS, I was always a chubby child. I was always. I'm completely like my daddy, and I walk like him. I have the face like him. Even when I lose weight in my body, but my cheeks will always be that chubby cheeks. So people are like, just out of blue, they're like, khana kam khao. So I'm like, what, dude? What khana kam khao? Do you even know what I've had the entire day? You have no idea, just commenting so generally, like khana kam khao, yeah, stop having sugar. I mean, that is something, of course, as I told you, it doesn't make any, because when I reply back in a very bad way, and I don't want to bring that here, like what I reply back when some of my friends say that. But in general, there are so many women, and there is one thing very important is your partner, be it your boyfriend, your husband, your anyone. Okay, so even girlfriend, as in case I'm not generalizing, so anyone, that's why I use the word partner. So one thing is, your relatives can tell you a comment a lot, your friends can comment a lot, your colleagues can comment a lot, you can still take it. But if your partner, the one who you go to bed with, at the end of the day, if he or she comments something, it's really going to bring you down. So I've been very fortunate there. Like before I could answer like come khao, he would answer for me. So, but like Mansi told, I've got so many women telling me, my partner, like one of the main reason, as I told you, was infertility. And I don't know, it's just like, it's so common. If a woman can't bear a child, I don't know what's wrong with her. The character, your character is assassinated, and so many different things. So she was very young. She was married when she was 22, and 24 she was when she texted me last year, telling, I've been unable to conceive. So I'm like, yeah, you're just 24. Yes, if you want to conceive, of course you can. That's not a problem. But go to an infertility doctor. She's like, yeah, I want to go for everything is there, but my husbands and my in-laws tell me that since I'm not going to have a baby, I mean, they've made a conclusion without even going to a doctor. Since I'm not going to have a baby, why doesn't my husband get married to somebody else? And or comments like my husband doesn't want to have a sexual relationship with me because he knows he's going to gain nothing. I mean, I don't know why do they. I mean, I don't know what's the gain. I really don't know what is this thought process of making women just a machine of production. Yes, she will have it when she wants, but you putting statements across which are really hurtful. And like I am pig skin, not everybody is pig skin. Mostly women are very sensitive. And the second very difficult point is, I mean, 50% of the women who we see on our page who are following us are women who are either from the lower middle class family or the middle class family, or usually those who are financially dependent on their husband. I'm making statements here that I'm pig skin. That's only because at the end of the day, when you're dependent, I mean independent financially and every other, you get that extra boost of confidence to take decisions. Women there are not in that state to take that decision, because tomorrow when we suppose I suggest a supplement for them that is inositol, for example, which would help them in some way or the other. inositol is not cheap in India. So for them to get that inositol, they have to go through a lot of convincing for their husbands, and then getting statements like, तुम्हारी मम्मी पापा ने शादी से पहले क्यों नहीं बोला कि तुमको ये बीमारी है? I mean, these are really bad. So like, fortunately I haven't had that, but these people, when they bring all these statements, I mean, I realize there's so much women are hearing every day because of a single disorder which they are not to blame for.
Right. It's just heartbreaking, like the kind of health challenges. First of all, you're facing a challenge and then there's no support around you. Rather, people are just making it difficult to get out of that health situation. And I completely agree, to like basically go through a round of permissions to just decide what you want to do for your body. That is, kind of sad. And I think all of us have just been quite fortunate to have access to the right kind of information and spaces to take care of our bodies, if nothing else. So talking about challenges, we heard from Mansi and Ananya about the sort of health related challenges or insensitive remarks or taboos that they've heard about other people or have had to face. Asta, you being an entrepreneur, which is again not very, I mean, now yes, maybe it has become it's on the rise, but it's still difficult for a woman in India to have a leadership position, to be an entrepreneur. So what were your challenges when you decided that you were going to start something of your
own? I mean, I still remember the first time so I'm originally from Delhi, and then I moved to Bombay, lived for the longest time in Bombay, and then I moved to Bangalore. So when I moved to Bangalore to set up my venture and become a full-time entrepreneur, it was with a friend, another female friend. And I still remember that when we were setting up the space, the opening line she said was, listen, whenever we are going to look for places, we have to take at least 2 male figures with us, otherwise we will be swindled, and these people are not going to take us seriously, and they're not going to want to like it. And I'm like, huh, what? And then like it was so interesting to see that it was true. And this was my first venture, which I started in 2014. And we would take her husband everywhere with us. We would take her father everywhere with us, because we were so like in the space of that. They weren't taking us seriously, and the rebel in me was like, no, we are going to go on our own. What the hell? What is this? And then one day she was like, okay, let's go, the two of us. And sure enough, like there were a couple of landlords who actually turned us down because we were 2 women who wanted to start a center. Then we got turned down because it was a dance center, and dance in itself, if you want to start a yoga center, you're allowed. Oh, if there is dance, then you're not allowed. So like those kind of things would come up, and I was coming from a job background, very secure, very in my bubble, and then all this opened up, and then this whole thing of interacting with vendors, and then of course then the clients came into the picture. So I think it took some time for people to take us seriously. And then I realized that, but to be very honest, from 2014 to now, I've seen a shift in the way people now address women, whether it's as entrepreneurs, whether it's at work, or even the vendors I interact with. The second place I got, the second place I set up like entirely was me and my mother only. No other intervention. And we got it done. It's been blissful. It's been, people have respected us, looked up at us. So times are changing, yes. And I also feel that I started looking at myself differently. When I started taking myself, I wouldn't say seriously, but from the space of that, I know what I'm doing. I'm good at what I do. And there are other people who are good at what they do. So why don't we all take our positions correctly and just do what we are good at? And when that started happening, I think the space opened up, the business world opened up, and the way people interacted with me started to shift a lot. But yeah, I mean, initially I still remember it was this space of that I was only like, what's going on? Like people just wouldn't want to give us, wouldn't take us seriously. In fact, when we reached out for funding also, right, people were like, oh, but you are just doing it because it's a lifestyle business, you know, like one of those things that you don't have anything better to do, so you're getting into this kind of a space. And then I still have people asking me, oh, do you do this full time? Like, you know, dancing and all of that. I'm like, yes, it's like a 25-hour job a day if it's possible. So yeah, so I mean, it's interesting to get these reactions sometimes. I used to react before, and now I just laugh it off. I'm like, it's great. You don't know my side of the story, and I don't know yours. So it's fine. It's okay. So it's just one of those things.
Right. I love how, you know, now you can just laugh about it. I mean, being gone through all of that, being judged and being just judged only on the basis of your gender, like literally nothing else. I think probably everybody here would relate to it today. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little about Dhuri and Rumi? We haven't really spoken about that. So
yeah, okay.
What are these two places?
So both of them have a similar vision, but slightly different platforms of doing so. And the vision is basically reaching out to make a difference in people's lives. Dhuri makes that through creating a safe space in visual and performing arts. So we do a lot of dance there, a lot of fitness there, whether it's workshops, and I have classes for all sorts of levels. In fact, I also have a class which is called the Feel Good class, in which you're just coming to feel good about yourself. It doesn't matter whether you have a dance background, you don't have a dance background, how you're dancing. It's about feeling good about yourself. Yeah. So the medium in Dhuri is through the body. And in Rumi, or Connect with Ru, we do it through the mind. So there I work more with thought healing. I work with chakras, I work with pranic, I work with radical healing to understand that what in our mind, or what thought process in our mind is even asking us to crave excessive, say, sugar or something else, or sabotaging our own decisions. And so that's where I work with. But the overall intent for both has been to reach out to make some difference in a person, because I think came from a space where I used to not feel very good about myself. And whenever I used to have complexes about myself, my looks, the way, what I've achieved, where I've failed, all of that, I realized it was a downward spiral. And no matter how well I did, I would still beat myself about it. And there was no end to it. And I realized that if I can make even the slightest difference in a person's life, that they feel good about themselves, where they are, what they're doing, even what they're not doing, I think that was the main intention behind both the ventures, just through different platforms. One is body and one is mind. And I do try to bridge them also sometimes, the two come together. But I think people at the moment don't accept that all the time. So which is why I decided to separate out, but eventually it's all going to come together. So yeah, that's
right. That makes so much sense. Body and mind, they have to work together. I have a very interesting question here, which I would just like to, it's a very quick question. Somebody's addressed it at Astha saying, is it difficult to start dancing after 30?
Not at all. It's not at all difficult to start. You can start dancing anytime you decide you want to dance. I feel anyone can dance. It's just, of course, yeah, you may not be able to do everything immediately, and it might take us a little longer to absorb what kids absorb like this. But who's competing against whom? You're just doing it for yourself. So why not? feel good.
Dance your heart out.
Absolutely.
Right. We have one more. It's just a comment that I would just like to take up quickly. So somebody has posted that literally so apt about that inositol issue. I think that was what Ananya was talking about. She could totally relate about that with her patients. She's a yoga trainer who's posted it here. So I think she again has had, those people who've shared stories about healthcare not being affordable or taking permission. So she just wants to thank Ananya for talking about that topic. Okay, so while we're on the topic of challenges, we've heard about health challenges, we've heard about challenges of being an entrepreneur. Ritu, why don't you tell us your challenges of being a fit mom? And when I say that, I mean, often women say how they don't have time for themselves because they have to take care of the house, they have to take care of their kids, so they don't have time for themselves. How have you managed to take out that time for yourself and get on your journey of fitness?
So okay, so even while I'm in this session, thrice my kids have come and I've told them to go. So it's a challenge. It's literally is a challenge. Like even when I go to the washroom, my kids are banging my door from outside, mama, 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 and they're just literally calling me all the time. So taking out a dedicated time for yourself, it's definitely a challenge, especially when your kids are really, really small. So first thing which I think all women should understand is that, they should give their body time. Giving birth to a new baby is like a new birth for them. They're all muscles stretch, and it's like a new birth. You need to get into rehabilitation slowly. You can't just hit the gym and start lifting those weights immediately. Also mentally you're recovering. You've gone through a lot, and the pressure of handling a small baby delicately, then feeding that child, and then doing other tasks can be quite overwhelming. So I started my journey literally slowly without putting much pressure on me. I knew that my first rule to go for is taking rest. First, I'm going to rehabilitate myself mentally and physically. Then, I'm going to make some other goals for myself. So, I took one step at a time. There were days when I cried. There were days, still are days when my kids are not ready to sleep or my younger one just gets up. Breastfeeding is hard. It's tough, when you decide to breastfeed your child for 2 years as per WHO's recommendation, it's hard. So there has been sleepless nights, there has been things, but my whole role first has been, going easy and not putting much, one thing at a time, and not overwhelming myself. And then I think kids are monkeys. Monkey see, monkey do. And if you present them that environment from the very beginning, they're going to become your biggest support ever. So I'm a hula hooper as well. So I hula hoop. My daughter learned hula hooping just at the age of 3 years. My younger one is 2 years and she has picked up her own hoop and she keeps hooping with me. So there was a time when I used to work out. They used to get up on my back. They used to pull my hair. They never let me do it. I realized that I don't have to stop, wait for them to sleep and then do my workout. So I started including them in my things, preparation of the meals and helping mama. Let's do it together. Let's become fit. In the evening, me and my husband and kids go for a run together. I tell my daughter, you do the cycling, I will run, and let's see who comes first. So they have become very cooperative now. When I work out, they know that this is a regular task. Like kids understand that cooking is a regular task. They understand that this is a regular task. So once they get this feeling that when mama work out, that's a regular task and we need to let her do that. So it's become like this now. Regarding finding time, yes, if you're cooking, if you're washing all your clothes, if you're managing the house and have 2 kids or 1 kid and you're having sleepless nights, it will be overwhelming. So I always convey this message to women: go easy, start with one habit at a time, and maybe wait for the right opportunity. And should be no shame in asking for help. Shout on your husband, tell him, kids are not alone, mine, they're yours too. Okay, tell them your problem. Families are always very supportive if you tell them your problems nicely. So when I had diastasis, all my family, when my muscles separated, so they were not aware. My mother blamed me for exercising more because I got it. So my in-laws were not aware. So I literally had to first make them aware and then ask for help. Like, I cannot lift my kids. Please, you lift them up because my muscles are separated. If I lift them up, they will separate more. I asked my husband, please, we'll do it together. Yeah, I will do your work, you do mine. So women, we need to convey our problems to others, and then only we can find a solution. Most of the women, they just keep sulking inside. My husband doesn't help. You tell them. Sometimes, men have been conditioned like that they don't know how to help. Not that they don't want to help, they don't know how to help. So sometimes you need to tell men, this is the problem, maybe in a polite manner, not fight with them, you don't do this, you don't do that. Maybe just tell them, I'm facing this, let's do it together. And then they help. And luckily my family has been really supportive. And once my work started increasing, like I'm a full-time fitness coach now, I'm the India's first licensee, so I have a lot of work going on. So I hired a help at home. So we have a cook and everybody. So that part is now managed for now. So if somebody, even if they can't hire a help, ask for help from your family. Set a timetable. Right. Most of the time, women these days are busy on Instagram, watching their phone, telling my kids doesn't let them sleep. It's basically not the kids, it's their phone which doesn't let them sleep. Our mothers did not have any phone or computers and laptops and all these. So they had ample time. I remember my mother washing, cooking, sweeping, mopping, and then still having time to do that kadhai bunai and sit with her girlfriends in the evening and have that gala time. But we don't get that. Right. I spending that on the Netflix or phone. So having a right. for your kids, for yourself, I think that works.
I think that is something all of us in every age group would relate to, not having time, blaming it on not having time, but it's just our phones and laptops that we are not ready to give up. Yeah. So yes, truly said. I will now quickly move on to the last segment, which is I mean, this question would be directed towards everybody. First, I'd like to hear from Mansi. So Mansi, I mean, Ritu almost touched on the question already. For you, being a student, especially because we get a lot of women come to us who are students, who are undergrad, postgrad students, and they have this one reason or excuse to not get onto their journey of lifestyle modification, saying there's too much happening in college. I don't have the time to think about diet and workouts, especially workouts. How do you manage it being a PhD scholar at IIT Delhi? I'm sure it's not an easy job.
See, basically, initially, it can get tough. Yes. Basically, you have to first, initial few weeks, at least 2-3 weeks are very tough because you're trying to, fit a new lifestyle into your, schedule. If you're not somebody who's already very active. So, it takes time. Nobody's perfect. Even my journey initially wasn't perfect. Takes time. But, Ritu said that it's mostly because of our phones and everything that we think that we don't have the time. But it's really not the case. If you plan your day around it, I also plan my meals around my classes, my TA duties and everything. So it's totally possible. And, for, like you said about workouts, it's difficult for women to, find out time, working women or students to find time to work out. So, what I did was, instead of, maybe taking a rickshaw to the other department, because IIT Delhi campus is huge. So moving from one department to the other is, 2 kilometers. So I prefer to walk, I'd leave 10 minutes earlier. I'll do a brisk walk. So that is how you kind of, include all these things in your lifestyle, so that you can do it consistently, basically. And, right. I always look for things that I can sustain. I look for a, meal option that I can sustain in the long run. I look for a workout that fits in my schedule. I will not, apply for a gym membership that I cannot go to, basically. I know my schedule will not allow me to go to a gym membership, but then, if I have a deadline at 12 o'clock, I can go for a walk at 1 a.m. also because I live in a safe, secure campus. So I just prefer to go for a happy workout or, something that doesn't stress me out. I'd rather, just dance with my roommate in my room. So anything that fits my schedule. So that is what I focus on. Something that is sustainable for me. I will not fall for a very low calorie keto diet or something because it's not sustainable. I could do that for a month. I'll not be able to do it for my life. So I always,
and especially living in a hostel, I'm sure, again, another big question that people generally have, how do you manage it staying in a hostel, because you can't choose what you're eating? How do you manage that aspect of it?
See, again, I've been very, very fortunate because I am a PhD scholar. So I kind of live in a small apartment on campus. So I have access to a kitchen. But even, for
Right.
example, while I was eating at a mess, we had that option of asking the people at the mess to make us boiled food or, make khichdi for us. Or for example, if there is a dal cooked outside, they could make like a boiled version of it without the spices, without the extra oil. And, if there's a mixed vegetable made outside, they'd make it for you. So most people,
Right.
they just, hesitate asking for help that way. I've suggested to a lot of people to ask your wardens if you can keep, an induction in your room, maybe, or like a kettle at least, something like that. So
Yeah.
initially they were just resistant, they just didn't ask basically. But once they did, then they kind of got permissions, because, if you speak to your warden, they would let you do it sometimes. So, you just
Right,
need to
right.
like make that effort from your end. So it's totally possible
Ask
if
for
you
help,
make that
have
effort.
dialogues.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yes. That's all it's coming down to. So
And
Ananya, what about
another
you?
thing?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead.
another thing that's very, very important for managing PCOS in the hostel is, having a very strong willpower. It's not very easy to eat your khichadis while your roommates are eating a pizza. So that is also, one thing that you need to kind of work on. So what I generally do and what I generally suggest to others is that if I know my roommates are going to be having like a pizza party at 8 o'clock, I'll cook and eat my meal at 7:45. So that I'm full already by the time they start their pizzas. So, max to max, I'll have a slice or maybe like a few bites. I'll not, end up eating more of it. So that is how, you just need to make that effort from your end only. And
Right.
it takes time, but you figure it out.
Right. You have to make those choices at the
Yeah.
end of the day. So yeah, what about you, Ananya? You are an academician. You, I'm sure, have a super hectic schedule as well. So what are some tips that you follow to make sure you are on track?
So me and Mansi have a very similar story, because she studies at a university, I work at a university. Plus, I'm also doing my PhD from Madras University. So I am teaching, I am studying, I am managing house. Of course, I have a house help who helps, but every woman who has their house, she knows, no matter how many house help you have, it's the end of the day, it's you doing the jhadu and pocha and not they. Okay, so not just that, other than that, like food plays a very vital role. And I very strongly, for 24 hours you work out for 1 or 2 hours. The rest 22 hours, it's the food that you need to work out. You can maximum work out for 2 hours in a 24-hour stretch, but the rest of the time it's the food that you need to check in. So initially, I had to cook. When I tell people I never used to cook, they don't accept the fact that I never used to cook, looking at my Instagram page. But that revolution came because of PCOS and because I had to cook meals for myself. So the cook who comes, she cooks for my husband, and because it's just the two of us, I take this extra effort of not letting her cook my meal. First of all, because of course they come and they just they are not going to cook millet separately for me and make chapati separately for my husband. They're just going to do one job. So she does the basics and everything and all of that. So, but when it comes to me, because of course for 1 year we've been at home and teaching from Zoom sessions and everything. But when there was a regular schedule, like I had a schedule from like 8 o'clock, the college started, and it finished at 4 o'clock. Of course, for PhD, I didn't have to go to a college because I'm a working professional. I never have to, just to, if you have some GD, PI, all of those things, and you go. Other than that, you really don't need to go. So what I do is, in my kitchen, there's this platform where I have a small board, like a green board, and every Saturday I write down my meals. Ki breakfast mein ye, lunch mein ye, and even if it's a takeaway, that also I mentioned that it's going to be a takeaway or I'm going to eat outside. Very specifically, because it's only when you're not planned. I've realized this, that when I go to the kitchen without plan and I don't know what I want to have and kahan se shuru kare, that's when I take my phone and order on Zomato. So it's better to have a plan. So I every week on Saturday there's this sheet that goes up, and so if it's a Tuesday morning, I come up, I'm like, okay, today poha banana hai. So automatically I'm making it. So other than that, meal prepping also, like course, meal prepping, I mean, like I don't have basic dairy, so I usually prefer coconut milk. I love coconut milk more than almond milk also. So coconut milk is a task. The one that you get store bought is not something I really enjoy. So getting the coconut, breaking it, crushing it, I mean, of course I get help for that,
Making it from
but at the
scratch.
end of, yeah, making it from, I mean, that's how I enjoy it, and it gets over in 2 days, and again it's a new batch. So basic things, that's something, suppose there's the house help is off for a week, so I chop the vegetables and keep it in a, I mean, some people might say, oh, it's not healthy, but I don't even have an option. You have to think about it. Rather than me eating outside, it's better for me to eat the chopped vegetable after 2 days. I mean, I believe that's better. That's how I'm going to manage.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's how I'm going to manage it. Then easy meals, not putting too much dimag into making a meal, just the easy ones. I mean, there's so much on the internet, of course. Too much also gives you a lot of headache, but I mean, there are so many options. Even for me to start the entire page, the reason was not for me to go out or telling people, see how big of a chef I am. It wasn't the case. It was like, because there are women like, how do you manage? How do you cook? How do you cook separately for yourself and your husband? I mean, I'm fortunate in the place where the cook does it for him. I mean, there are times they go for chutti, right? The cooks. So what I do is like the same, like suppose a basic, lunch for an Indian household is chawal, dal and sabzi. So there's chawal, dal and sabzi. I take the dal and sabzi along with some, cucumbers, or if there is some quinoa boiled or some millet boiled, and he's having it as basic rice. It's nothing. People make it as if, oh, you have to go out of the way to do something. It's nothing out of the way. It's how you manage it, how you plan it, how you prep it. It's always that.
Right.
And even having your snack, the healthy snack ready, because when you don't have your healthy snack ready, your hand automatically goes to a Lay's packet. It automatically goes to the it's human tendency. I mean, I'm nobody to blame to anyone. And at the end of the day, I also feel, talking about all of this, there are times nobody's perfect. There are times I fail. I'm like, nahi banana hai. I am going to order it no matter what, and it's fine. When you do that, and then women go into a guilt trip. Why did I do that if I had everything planned? I'm like, it's human nature. It's fine if you do that. Even, to somebody to tell, earlier I used to have that guilt trips. I'm like, Arey yaar, after having half of the pizza, I'm like, why did I have it? And my husband will like, Kaliana, ab it's over. Why do you stress about that? It's over. Tomorrow or this entire week, work out a bit more, or cut down on your foods more. Why regret on something that's done? So it's
Right.
okay. Sometimes we are not imperfect in our plans and prepping, but that's fine. But it's
Right.
good when you're working. It's good to have things that are plan and prep and keep everything. It's easy for you. You don't waste a lot of time
Right.
when you're very unorganized.
Right. So plan better, maintain a food diary. And like
Right.
Captain Ritu also said, go easy on yourself. You don't have to
Right.
hate yourself. You don't have to hate your body. So last bit, Astha, I would like to hear from you how, like, what would your tip be being, being in a full-fledged high stress corporate career, or being a full-time entrepreneur, like you mentioned, it's a 24-hour job sometimes. What would your take be for, especially for women in the corporate sector? As we all know, that the stress levels are always high. So that's one, like, how would you advise them to manage that and still take care of their bodies?
I think I would just want to say that know that you deserve to take care of your body and you deserve a good, easy lifestyle. I think a lot of us just keep trying to compete with ourselves, and we're like, how can we rest? Oh no, today I didn't do this. How could I, like, take a break? How could I, and there is just so much pressure, like I think all of you mentioned it in your own ways, that we put on ourselves if we don't come up to our benchmark only. I mean, forget other people, even our own benchmarks. And that somewhere manifests as excessive stress in the corporate sector, getting bosses who are just, they would just don't understand you, they don't get you, because somewhere we ourselves are, we ourselves don't let ourselves feel that we deserve a good life, which is balanced, which has food that you can easily make, cook, recipes that you enjoy, family time that you can get. And yeah, even if you want Netflix time, you get that without having to compromise on anything else. So I think it starts with knowing that we deserve it. And when we feel and we truly believe that we deserve it, the timetables, the plan of action, everything starts to fall in place. So yeah, I mean, I think it would just
Right.
wrap up with that thing that
Amazing. Amazing. That it all at the end is coming down to, you know, how we need to love ourselves more, we need to accept ourselves more, and just know that we deserve things. Okay, we have a comment here and post that we'll just do a very quick fun exercise with all our speakers, and then we can end the note. So somebody said that somebody's wished all of us advanced women's day, and she's saying that it was great learning from each one of you. And yeah, so yeah, we feel the same. There was so much to learn from 4 different women from completely diverse backgrounds. I'm so glad I could, you know, talk to you guys on this platform. Just one very quick thing. So since the theme of this year's International Women's Day is choose to challenge, just one word or one phrase that comes to your mind when I say choose to challenge. Yeah, you can take 10 seconds to think about it. Mansi, would you like to go first? You're on mute. Yeah.
One thing that I would want everybody to challenge is the fact that, just speaking about these things openly is something that I would want everybody to challenge. Being able to talk about it, being free enough to speak about it, being free enough to talk about these issues to everybody. I think that is one thing that I want.
Awesome. Captain Ritu, would you like to go next?
Well, when I say choose to challenge, I would say it is choose to challenge your own self and with confidence embrace your own individuality. There is nothing called perfect in this life, but there is something called individuality. So own those stretch marks, own those imperfections, own it, and live a life like a queen. I think that's what I would say.
Perfect. That's perfect. Ananya?
Yeah. So, for me, choose to challenge is not to challenge myself. Or, for me, choose to challenge is remove the word challenge from my, there's nothing so challenging that's going to, ruin my mental health. And, like going through all of this and listening to everybody, I've realized that you eat good food, you exercise, everything. At the end of the day, if you're not loving what you're doing and you're not loving your body, it's just a weight. All the challenges, all the 7 days, 21 days, and all the challenges in the world, are away. So for me, it's like not to challenge yourself to that extent where you go crazy. Be easy on yourself and make yourself happy. That's the most important thing. Only women, when you make yourself happy, your husband, your children, your in-laws, your partners, everybody else is going to be happy. You cannot make, I've seen women telling, let's sacrifice this and make them happy. It's never going to happen. It's not going to go for the long run. Yeah, so be easy on yourself.
That's a very interesting take. Choose to challenge, not to challenge. Asta?
Yeah, I think I second Anya's completely. Choose to challenge, not to challenge. If at all, you want to, just question the limiting beliefs that you have, question everything that you feel that this is it, am I only capable of this much? But don't challenge, because challenge in itself puts up another fight, and then again it becomes a fight. The journey starts. So yeah, I think completely second on Anya.
I think we have enough fights to take care of anyway. Right. Great. This is a great session. If anybody has any quick questions or comments, please feel free to put it down in the chat, or we could then close the session in 2 minutes. I think there was a lot of information to absorb anyway. I'm not sure if you're going to get any questions here. Okay. I think we can definitely close the session. Once again, thank you so much. There was a lot to learn from all of you, and thank you to everybody who joined this session and was a part of it. It's really nice how women come together to celebrate each other, and that's exactly what we wanted to see and what we wanted to do here. So thank you to all of you.
Thank
I
you for
will
having
see
me.
you guys
Thank
in the
you.
next session
Thank you
tomorrow.
so much.
Thank you for having.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Nice meeting you all. Bye bye.
Yes, nice. Thank you.